Man, the energy around the Eagles right now feels like one of those weeks when everything happens at once. Before we even get into the drama and the back and forth that's been lighting up social media, we need to start where the whole conversation began. And that's with this injury update that dropped right before the cameras turned on. And you know how it is, you think you're getting a simple walkthrough list. And suddenly it feels like half the locker room got hit by the same bus. The report comes out. And boom! It is stacked with names. It is one of those lists that makes fans take a deep breath before scrolling. Because you already know it is not going to be pretty. It starts with guys dealing with shoulders, groins, ankles, all kinds of stuff that makes you wonder how the team even got through practice. There are veterans who normally never pop up on these reports suddenly taking a step back. Young players who were supposed to be on the rise trying to fight through something. And others who barely got healthy before landing right back in the medical room. And even though it was only an estimated walkthrough, seeing that many key pieces listed as non-participants or limited immediately changes the tone. Going into the next matchup, fans want answers. Players want clarity. And the coaches stem that challenge of keeping everything balanced while still getting the team ready, but even with the bumps and bruises. One of the biggest storylines that came out of this was about the safety room. Because Reed Blankenship's situation was something everybody was watching closely. Vic Fangio talked about him after practice. And you could tell they want him back on the field as soon as possible. He has been dealing with that thigh issue. But the coaching staff made it pretty clear that they expect him to play. And the way Fangio spoke about him staying locked in during meetings, staying focused through walkthroughs, staying sharp even without full reps, it shows he isn't just physically ready. He is mentally locked into. But the door opening for Reed also means another door opens for someone fans have been waiting to see take that next step. And that's Sidney Brown. The kid is hungry. He has been waiting for this shot. And now it looks like he is going to get that starting opportunity. And honestly, that alone has generated so much conversation. People have been debating everything. From his energy level to his technique to what he can bring to the back end of this defense. But one thing that needed to be shut down fast was that ridiculous narrative floating around, saying he hurt Andrew Makuba on purpose just to get more playing time. That is one of those takes that only happens on the internet. Brown went in to make a play. Makuba got twisted up in a bad position. And unfortunately ended up with a serious injury. Nobody is celebrating that. Nobody is rooting for that. And the idea that Brown did it intentionally makes zero sense when you look how the play unfolded. Fangio even mentioned that Brown has been having some strong reps in practice. And that is something he does not say lightly. If Fangio thinks you are average, he will tell the room you are average. If he thinks you are struggling, he will say you are struggling. But when he points out that someone is performing really well, then yeah, that means something. That tells you the coaching staff sees potential, sees improvement, and sees a player who might be ready to take advantage of a real opportunity. And if for some reason things don't click right away, there are other ways to rotate. Maybe Cooper Dean gets some looks. Maybe Michael Carter drops into certain packages, but for now, this is Brown's moment, and while all this is happening, Cowboys fans decided they needed to jump into the conversation too, because of course they did. A rivalry like this never stays quiet for long. They saw the chance, saw the injury situation, saw the frustration from last week, and immediately started running with it like they won the championship in the middle of the season. And look, if the situation were reversed, a lot of Eagles fans would probably be talking the same kind of talk. Rivalries are built on that spice. But then George Pickens decided he wanted a slice of the attention too. And that is when everything really started getting loud. He went into the comments and dropped that whole rant about weak Philly fans and sandwiches. And man, that set off a wildfire. And the funny part is, out of everything he said, the sandwich thing might be the only part anyone agreed with. Because yeah, Philly does have unbelievable food. Nobody is denying that. But Pickens didn't stop at that. He kept going, throwing shade at the fan base, talking recklessly like he has already punched his ticket deep into the postseason. And that is when the conversation shifted, because if there is one thing fans can smell immediately, it is a player talking before he has actually accomplished what he is talking about. And that became the whole vibe. Instead of worrying about the Eagles, what he should really be focused on is helping his team survive the rest of the season. The playoffs aren't guaranteed. Contracts aren't guaranteed. Even staying on the roster long term isn't guaranteed. And the crazy Part is, when you really look back at that matchup, it wasn't like he dominated the secondary at the start of the game. When the Eagles still had their original plan on the field, he was quiet. Quan Mitchell had him clamped. He wasn't getting separation, wasn't getting open looks, wasn't doing much of anything. It was only after injuries forced the Eagles to shuffle corners and safeties around that he finally started getting into the stat sheet, and that is what makes the trash talk so wild. Because when you break down the film, what really happened? The Eagles lost both safeties, a corner got shaken up. Michael Carter had barely learned the full playbook. Two corners literally ran into each other on the game-clinching play. That's not dominance. That's chaos. And the Cowboys took advantage of chaos, which every team in the league would try to do, but acting like that proves anything deeper is just noise. Meanwhile, Eagles fans weren't sitting around complaining about the Cowboys. They were frustrated with their own team. They were questioning the play calling, the communication, the late game decisions, the blown leads. They were annoyed because it felt like the Eagles beat the Eagles more than anyone else beat them, and when that's the reality, the last thing anyone cares about is a wide receiver from another team talking like he owns the city. The focus is internal, because that is where the real problems are. And that is where the real solutions need to come from. And while all that was unfolding, another storyline quietly kept building. Jalen Hurts, the dude is locked in. He is calm, he is focused, and he is not getting caught up in the noise. Somebody asked him about improving the passing game, and he shut that down immediately. He didn't care about stats. He didn't care about narratives. He didn't care about how pretty or ugly the offense looked. He said winning is the only thing that matters. And until the team gets that part right, nothing else takes priority. And that is the mindset this team needs, because the issues in the passing attack are real. But they aren't just about Hurts. The designs have been predictable. The timing has been off. The offensive line hasn't been giving consistent protection. You can see it on the film. The pockets collapse too fast, and the routes take too long to develop. It is a mismatch of problems happening at the exact same time. The thing about Hurts is that he has always carried himself like someone who refuses to get rattled by outside noise. Even when everything around him looks messy, even when the offense is stumbling, even when fans are losing patience, his composure never changes. And that calmness is part of what makes him so dangerous. Because when a quarterback blocks out every distraction and zeroes in on the solution instead of the problem, that's when a team starts to realign itself. That's when identity begins to take shape again, and right now, the Eagles desperately need that identity. Because too many games this season have started one way and ended in complete chaos. You look at the tape and you see flashes of what this offense could be. Moments where the passing game clicks, where the receivers find rhythm, where the protection finally holds long enough for a clean shot down the field. And then immediately, on the next drive, something collapses. A missed assignment, a rushed throw, a predictable route concept, a breakdown in timing. It is like watching a car that accelerates beautifully for a moment, and then sputters right when you think it is finally settling into a smooth ride. And Hurts feels that. You can tell he is tired of the inconsistency, tired of the offense leaving points on the field. Tired of being asked the same questions when he knows the answers don't come from talking, but from execution. But it's not just about the passing game. The running game has its own identity crisis, happening in real time. Saquon Barkley is supposed to be the explosive piece in the backfield. The guy who can break a run from anywhere on the field and change the momentum of a drive instantly. But he has been laboring. The lower body injuries keep hanging around, slowing him down just enough to affect his burst, his ability to cut, his ability to explode through a gap. And every time he has to limp through another tough series, you can feel the fanbase wondering how long he can keep pushing through that pain without aggravating something even worse. That is why Tank Bigsby has suddenly become such an important conversation. He runs differently. He hits gaps with a kind of reckless confidence that doesn't rely on pure explosion, but on decisiveness. He doesn't wait for the perfect crease, he forces one. And sometimes that is exactly what a struggling offensive line needs, because an aggressive runner can mask a lot of small mistakes. Bigsby has fresh legs, fresh energy, fresh urgency. And that might be the spark the offense has been missing when drives stall out and the rhythm disappears. It is not about replacing Barkley. It is about managing the load so that the team has both power and finesse available when the season gets cold and physical. Teams that survive December and January usually aren't relying on a single back. to carry the entire weight of the offense. They rotate, they conserve, they pick their spots. And speaking of the offensive line, that unit is another massive storyline right now. There were clips going around showing Jordan Mailata struggling in ways people aren't used to seeing. Missed blocks, awkward footwork, moments where defensive linemen slipped past him like he wasn't even planted. When an anchor piece starts giving up pressures at that rate, the ripple effect hits the entire offense. The quarterback feels it, the receivers feel it, the play caller feels it. Suddenly everything looks rushed, everything looks tight, everything looks uncomfortable. And that discomfort is exactly what defenses feed on. When they smell hesitation, they attack even harder. That's why the offensive line has to stabilize. Because until the protection becomes consistent again, no scheme in the world is going to fix the timing of the passing game. But the wildest part of all of this is that despite the flaws, despite the injuries, despite the drama, despite the trash talk, despite the inconsistencies, the Eagles haven't lost who they are. They've just lost track of it temporarily. A team doesn't erase its strengths overnight. They are still a passing-heavy team. They are still built around Hurts' ability to extend plays, the receiver's ability to win one-on-one matchups, and the combination of power and finesse in the backfield. What they need is a commitment, a willingness to accept that forcing balance just for the sake of balance isn't working. Sometimes a team needs to lean into what it does best until everything else catches up, and that's why some fans are calling for the passing volume to increase. Not because they want Hurts to throw 50 times, but because 20 passes here and 23 passes there isn't enough for this offense to find a rhythm. When the defense doesn't have to respect the passing game, everything gets cramped. Safeties sit closer, corners play tighter, linebackers creep up. And suddenly the run game that should be opening up the offense instead becomes predictable and overcrowded. That's why a stretch of 28 to 32 throws might actually be the sweet spot. Enough to unlock the receivers without making the offense one-dimensional. And while all of that is happening inside the locker room, outside of it the rivalry talk keeps getting louder. Cowboys fans are still chirping, still celebrating that mid-season win like it was a parade moment. But the funniest part of it all is how little the Eagles seem to care about the noise. The frustration isn't pointed toward the opponent, it is pointed inward. They know what they messed up. They know where the flaws came from. They know exactly which plays they want back. That is why Hurts' interview hit so hard, because it wasn't angry, it wasn't bitter, it wasn't dramatic. It was focused. He didn't care about passing game improvements if they didn't lead to wins. He didn't care about stats if the scoreboard didn't reflect the work. And that kind of mindset spreads through a locker room like wildfire. Leaders who stay grounded create teams that stay grounded. And teams that stay grounded in adversity usually grow stronger from it. FlyEaglesFly News family, smash subscribe and hit like. Your support keeps the freshest Philadelphia Eagles updates flying in. Drop your take in the comments and let's talk birds. Whispers started as harmless chatter, the kind of late-night speculation that usually dissolves by morning, but this time, the murmurs didn't fade. Instead, they grew louder, sharper, carrying a sense of inevitability until the room suddenly fell silent. A deal between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Tennessee Titans had finally been confirmed, and once again, Howie Roseman stood at the center of the storm, leaving fans, analysts, and insiders scrambling to piece together what just happened. Details of the exchange remain wrapped in that familiar cloak of controlled mystery. No one seems ready to go on record. And yet everyone claims to know someone who swears this move had been brewing beneath the surface for weeks. The only certainty is that Roseman, a figure who thrives in the shadows of the league's most unexpected maneuvers, has delivered another move that nobody saw coming until it was already done inside league circles. The trade is being described as one of those transactions that can tilt the balance of power. Before anyone even fully understands the implications, some insiders hint that the front office in Philadelphia had been closely monitoring a particular weakness and struck the moment the opportunity appeared. Others insist the Titans were eager to reshape key pieces of their roster, and the Eagles simply offered the right mix of value and vision. What adds to the intrigue is the reaction behind closed doors. Executives around the league are reportedly stunned, some even irritated, as if Roseman once again pulled a lever they hadn't noticed. Titans personnel, meanwhile, are said to be divided, part excitement, part uncertainty, though no one seems willing to speak publicly. The locker rooms on both sides are buzzing with speculation, players exchanging glances that say everything without a word spoken. No official breakdown has surfaced yet, but the atmosphere feels electric. Almost restless, it's the kind of move that prompts fans to scroll endlessly, refreshing feeds, searching for any scrap of clarification, and while the full picture will eventually emerge, the sensation for now is one of suspense, of possibility, of a franchise altering its trajectory in real time. One thing is certain, the league won't stop talking about this one anytime soon. That's a wrap from FlyEaglesFly News. If you want the fastest Eagles updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Sound off in the comments. Let's talk birds.